Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
Character gets reborn as red-haired Shanks inside of the world of Record of Ragnarok. What will he do? Who will he fight inside of the world of Ragnarok?
Practical. If Adam falls, I need the next candidate ready. I looked up at her with a relaxed grin. You've got a list? Yes, she replied, eyes still on Adam. But I need an answer. I scratched my cheek. You want my opinion? I want a confirmation, she said, tone flat. I glanced toward the ring again. Adam took another hit to the ribs and slid back. He stayed upright. I spoke calmly, voice low enough that it wouldn't carry. If Zeus keeps this pace, Adam's going to take too much damage. You should prep someone who can handle a strong god without needing to match speed. Brunhild's eyes narrowed slightly. Names. I tilted my head, thinking, but not for long. Someone with endurance and a clean plan. Not someone who gets baited. Don't put in a show-off. Brunhild's jaw tightened. That doesn't narrow it. I chuckled softly. Yeah, you're right. She waited, expression unmoving. I kept my voice easy. Pick whoever you trust to stay calm. That's what matters. Brunhild's eyes flicked to my face. You're avoiding the question. I smiled. I'm not trying to run your roster. She didn't smile back. You already changed the first match. I shrugged lightly, still relaxed. I fought. That's it. Brunhild stared at the ring again. Zeus landed another hit on Adam's face. Adam staggered a fraction, then steadied. Brunhild spoke again, quiet and clipped. If Adam loses, the humans' morale will drop. Your win won't hold it up alone. I nodded once. Yeah. I know. She looked at me sharply, like she expected more. I gave her an easy grin. Still not picking for you. Brunhild's expression tightened, but she didn't argue. She exhaled through her nose and turned her attention fully to the match again. I looked back down too. Adam stepped forward again, blood on his chin, eyes steady. Zeus bounced lightly, grinning. They clashed again. The pace was relentless now. Punch. Dodge. Punch. Counter. Punch. Hit. Copy. Hit. The crowd noise rose into a constant wall. Humans were crying openly now, screaming Adam's name like it might keep him standing. Gods were shouting Zeus's name with a savage edge, demanding a kill and enjoying the show at the same time. A fighter 2 seats to my right leaned toward me, voice tense. If Adam loses, who do you think goes next? I glanced at him, smile still easy. Ask Brunhild. He grimaced. She won't answer. I chuckled. Then she's doing her job. The fighter's jaw clenched. He looked back down, frustrated. Another fighter nearby spoke, voice low, more thoughtful. You gave Adam advice earlier. Do you think he listened? I shrugged lightly. Adam doesn't chase. He just walks forward. The fighter nodded as if that made sense, then went quiet. Down below, Zeus landed another clean hit to Adam's ribs. Adam's body bent slightly, and he slid back again. This time he took a knee for a brief moment, not collapsing, just touching down to stabilize. The human stands screamed like they'd been stabbed. Zeus tilted his head, still smiling. You okay? Adam looked up calmly. Yes. He stood again. Zeus laughed, pleased. Brunhild's posture tightened beside me. Her hands were clenched behind her back. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. I kept my face relaxed, but I felt a small leak of concern in my chest. Adam was still moving forward, still matching, but he was paying for it. Zeus stepped in again. Adam matched again. The exchange continued, and the arena floor cracked more with every burst of speed and every slide. Dust stayed in the air now, never fully settling. I leaned forward slightly more, eyes steady, voice quiet as I spoke to no one in particular, still sounding like myself. He's tough. Brunhild didn't answer. The fighters around me didn't answer either. They were all watching, hearing the impacts, seeing the blood, feeling the crowd's mood shift with every hit. Zeus laughed again, louder. Adam stepped forward again, calm. And the second match kept grinding forward, faster and harsher with every exchange, while I stayed seated among the human champions, eyes on the ring, shoulder aching softly, hand resting near my sword out of habit. Chapter 8, Quiet Plans, Loud Punches. Zeus and Adam crashed together again, and the sound rolled up into the seats like a hard slap. I stayed leaned forward, elbows on my knees, eyes steady. Adam's feet slid across the broken stone and stopped cleanly, even when his body took a hit that should have folded him. Zeus bounced back with that wide grin, shoulders loose, looking pleased every time Adam stayed standing. The crowd reacted late sometimes, because the speed was too high for most eyes. Even so, the noise never stopped. It just changed shape. Humans screamed in fear, then screamed in hope, then screamed again when Adam took another clean shot. The god's side kept shouting Zeus's name with excitement that had turned sharp. Beside me, Brunhild stood rigid, hands clasped behind her back. I could feel her attention snapping between the ring and the fighters section, counting time and options. She wasn't the kind to get pulled into cheering. I kept my face relaxed, but my fingers tapped lightly once on the bench. It was a small habit. My shoulder still felt warm from my own fight. It didn't stop me from sitting like I belonged here. Zeus stepped in with another burst of wrong fast movement and punched Adam in the ribs. Adam's torso bent slightly. Blood ran from his mouth again. He slid back, stopped, and straightened. His expression stayed gentle, but his breathing was heavier now. He didn't look confused, just worked. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and stepped forward. Zeus laughed, delighted. Still coming? Adam nodded calmly. Yes. The humans screamed his name again like they could hold him upright with sound alone. I heard a fighter behind me mutter, voice tight. He's going to break. Another answered immediately, rough and stubborn. He won't. I didn't turn. I kept my eyes on Adam's feet and posture. He was taking too many clean hits now, but he wasn't losing his stance. That mattered. It meant he was still in control of himself even if his body was paying for it. Brunhild shifted beside me. I glanced up, and she was already turning away from the ring, stepping down the short aisle behind our row. Her pace was brisk but controlled. She wasn't leaving because she didn't care. She was leaving because she did. A Valkyrie approached her from the side aisle, moving quickly, long hair swaying as she came. She looked younger than Brunhild, expression tense, eyes flicking from the ring to Brunhild and back. I recognized her as one of the sisters, though I didn't need a name to read the situation. She carried that same sharp focus, but her tension sat closer to the surface. They met a few steps behind our row, close enough that I could hear them without trying. Brunhild spoke first, voice low and clipped. Status. The Valkyrie answered quickly. Adam is still fighting. Zeus is escalating. If Adam loses, we need the next pair ready. Brunhild's jaw tightened. I know. The Valkyrie's eyes flicked toward the arena as Zeus landed another clean hit, and the human stands screamed again. We can't afford momentum loss. Brunhild's gaze didn't soften. We can't afford reckless picks either. The Valkyrie drew a breath, then spoke a little more carefully. Who do you want next? Brunhild's eyes narrowed, not at the Valkyrie, but at the problem itself. Someone who won't get baited into trading. The Valkyrie hesitated. That removes several. It removes the wrong ones, Brunhild replied. I leaned back slightly on my bench and turned my head just enough to include them in my peripheral vision while still watching the ring. Zeus and Adam were exchanging again, fists blurring, Adam's body moving with tight, minimal dodges. Brunhild's voice stayed low. What options are ready? The Valkyrie answered, listing quietly. We can prepare. Brunhild cut her off with a small hand motion. Not a list. I want a choice. The Valkyrie swallowed, then said, someone with durability. Someone who can take a god's pace and still think. Brunhild's eyes flicked toward me briefly, then back to the Valkyrie. That's a description. Pick. The Valkyrie looked strained, like she hated being forced to commit. If Zeus wins here, the gods will push for faster kills. We should respond with someone who can punish overconfidence. Brunhild's voice hardened slightly. Punish, yes. But not with bravado. The Valkyrie nodded quickly. Understood. I let out a quiet breath through my nose, still calm. Brunhild was doing exactly what she should. The problem was that none of this planning mattered if Adam died before the next match could even start clean. Zeus punched again. Adam took it in the chest this time. The impact sound was heavy. Adam slid back, stopped, and stayed upright. Blood ran down his chin. His eyes stayed steady. The human side screamed again. Some sounded like they were crying. Brunhild's shoulders stiffened behind me. The Valkyrie's hands clenched at her sides. Brunhild spoke again, low. Coordinate with the next Volund candidate. Quietly. No panic. The Valkyrie nodded. Yes. Also, Brunhild added, voice even, watch the gods' reaction. If Zeus loses control, they may try to interfere. The Valkyrie's eyes widened slightly. Would they? Brunhild's look shut that down. They're gods. The Valkyrie swallowed and nodded again. I glanced back toward them properly now, turning my head a bit more. My expression stayed loose, but I added myself into the conversation without making it bigger than it needed to be. Hey, I said casually, voice friendly. Don't pick someone who gets excited when the crowd screams. Both of them looked at me. Brunhild's eyes narrowed as if she was weighing whether to snap at me. The Valkyrie looked surprised, then uncertain. I smiled faintly. They'll get baited. Zeus is doing it on purpose. Brunhild's voice was flat. I don't need commentary. I shrugged lightly. Yet. Just saying. The Valkyrie's lips pressed together. She looked back to the ring again and spoke quietly. Zeus is smiling more. I nodded once. That's not a good sign. Brunhild turned her head slightly toward me. You're staying alert. I grinned. Hard not to. She held my gaze for a beat, then looked back to the Valkyrie. Go. The Valkyrie bowed her head slightly and moved off down the aisle, steps quick and light. Brunhild remained standing behind our row, eyes back on the ring. Her posture stayed rigid, but I could see the tension in the way she held her shoulders. It was controlled tension. The kind that didn't leak out as panic. I turned my attention fully back to the fight. Zeus and Adam collided again, fists meeting with a sharp crack. Zeus bounced back, laughed, then surged forward. Adam dodged two, copied one, landed it, then took another hit to the ribs that made his torso tighten. The humans screamed. The gods shouted Zeus's name with hunger. A fighter next to me, tall, broad, face set like stone, spoke without looking away from the ring. That old god isn't slowing. I chuckled softly. Nope. He frowned. He's enjoying it. Yeah, I said, tone light. That's why it keeps getting worse. The fighter's jaw clenched. Disgusting. I smiled faintly, not disagreeing. Zeus has always been like that. Another fighter, leaner with sharp eyes, leaned in slightly and spoke in a low voice. You keep saying baited. You think he's trying to make Adam overextend? I shook my head slowly, keeping my eyes on the ring. Adam doesn't overextend. Zeus is baiting his body. He's making the pace so high that matching it hurts. The fighter's eyes narrowed. So Adam's losing even when he's keeping up. I nodded once. Yet. He let out a low breath. Then what can he do? I shrugged lightly. Adam's not the type to change his approach much. He just keeps walking forward. The fighter didn't look satisfied, but he didn't argue. He turned his attention back down, shoulders tight. Zeus stepped in again and punched Adam in the face cleanly. Adam's head snapped back. Blood sprayed. The humans screamed in panic. Adam slid back and stopped. His feet stayed under him. He didn't fall. He wiped his mouth again and stepped forward. Zeus laughed like he'd been rewarded. You're great. Adam answered calmly. Thank you. A fighter behind me made a sharp sound, like a quiet laugh that held no humor. He thanked him. Another replied, voice tense. He's polite. I kept my expression relaxed. Adam's just like that. The punches continued. Zeus's speed looked unreal, even compared to earlier. His arms moved in tight chains. His body didn't look like it should handle it, but it did. He was built wrong in a way that didn't show until he moved. Adam kept matching, copying the timing and motion. Every time Zeus changed rhythm, Adam responded. It was impressive in a simple, direct way. It was also costly. Adam's bruises spread. His shoulder cut widened. Blood on his chest grew darker. His breathing was heavier. His eyes remained calm, but his body was being forced to do more than it should have to. I felt my fingers tap once again against the bench, then stop. A fighter to my right glanced at my hand, then at my face. You're too calm for someone watching that. I smiled. I'm calm because panicking doesn't help. He frowned. You're calm because you're not the one in there. I chuckled softly, agreeing without making it a fight. Yet. That too. He looked back down, jaw tight. Zeus landed another heavy hit to Adam's chest. Adam slid back and took a knee for a brief moment again, steadying himself. Blood dripped from his mouth onto the stone. The human stand screamed louder than anything so far. Some of it sounded like a pleading. Zeus tilted his head, still smiling. You okay? Adam looked up. Yes. He stood. Zeus laughed again, delighted. I exhaled slowly. My shoulders stayed loose, but my attention sharpened even more. Zeus was pushing into the area where the fight stopped being about skill and started being about whether Adam's body would simply fail. Behind us, Brunhild shifted again. Her boots scraped lightly against stone. I heard her voice, low, directed at someone else this time. Another Valkyrie had approached, different from the first, posture steadier, eyes cooler. Brunhild spoke quietly. You'll stand by. If Adam falls, we move immediately. The second Valkyrie nodded once. Understood. Brunhild's tone remained controlled. No delays. No arguing. Humanity can't afford a messy transition. The Valkyrie answered, yes. I didn't turn fully. I didn't need to. I could hear the planning and feel the urgency. The fighter beside me leaned toward me again, voice low. Brunhild's planning like Adam's already dead. I smiled faintly. She's planning like she wants someone ready. He scowled. Same thing. I shrugged lightly. Better than being surprised. He didn't like that answer, but he didn't argue. Zeus suddenly stopped mid-bounce and rolled his shoulders, grinning toward the gods' stands. Watch this, he said happily. The gods roared. He turned back to Adam with a gleeful expression and moved. The next punch sequence was even tighter. Zeus's fist appeared in front of Adam's face with almost no visible motion. Adam tried to dodge. He still got clipped. Then hit again. Then again. A rapid chain, each punch landing more often now. Adam's head snapped. His body slid back. Blood sprayed. The humans screamed. Adam still stayed upright. He wiped his mouth again, slower now. His breathing was heavier. His chest rose and fell with more effort. Then he stepped forward again. He copied the same rapid chain and punched Zeus in return. Zeus's head snapped back once. Then Zeus laughed harder than ever, delighted. The gods' side noise surged, some furious, some thrilled. Zeus looked thrilled. Adam looked calm. A fighter behind me spoke in a strained tone. He can't keep doing that. Another answered, desperate. He has to. I kept my gaze steady. He's going to keep doing it anyway, I said quietly, not dramatic, just stating what I saw. The fighter beside me tightened his fists. So he dies. I kept my expression relaxed, but my voice stayed even. Maybe. Or he pushes Zeus far enough that Zeus makes a mistake. The fighter looked like he wanted to argue, then stopped. He turned back to the ring. Brunhild's voice rose just slightly behind us, still quiet, but sharper. Don't look away. It was directed at the Valkyries, not at us. But it hit the whole section anyway. The second Valkyrie nodded again, eyes locked on the ring. I leaned forward a little more, elbows still on knees, and kept watching. Zeus landed another heavy shot to Adam's ribs. Adam's body bent. He slid back and nearly stumbled on the broken stone. He caught himself, feet adjusting at the last second. That was new. Not fear. Not hesitation. Just footing getting harder to keep when your body was being hit too often. The human stands screamed again, louder, ragged. Zeus grinned wide and stepped in, ready to capitalize. Adam's eyes sharpened slightly. He moved forward anyway. He copied. He hit Zeus again. Zeus laughed and threw another punch. Adam dodged by a hair. The exchange continued, and it felt like the arena couldn't breathe. The crowd noise rose and fell in uneven waves. I heard more talk in the fighters section now. Less quiet than before. People couldn't hold it in. A fighter to my left said, voice rough, if Adam wins, we might actually have a chance. Another snapped, stop talking like that. The first fighter scowled. Why? You scared of hope? The second answered, tense. I'm scared of jinxing it. I laughed softly, almost under my breath. That's not how fights work. Both of them glanced at me. I gave an easy grin. If Adam wins, it's because he wins. Not because you said something. They didn't look convinced, but they stopped arguing. Brunhild stepped forward slightly, now close enough that her presence was right behind my shoulder. She spoke low, directed at me, quick and practical. You told me not to pick someone who gets excited when the crowd screams. I nodded. Yet. She paused for a beat. Name one who stays calm. I tilted my head slightly, still watching the ring. Zeus punched. Adam dodged. Adam countered. I answered without lifting my voice. Pick someone who hates gods. The calm kind. Not the loud kind. Brunhild's eyes narrowed even more. That's still vague. I grinned, almost apologetic. I'm not helping you gamble. I'm helping you not lose your head. Her expression stayed flat. I don't lose my head. I smiled wider. Good. She held the stare for a moment, then turned away again, speaking quietly to the Valkyries behind her. Prepare 2. Not 1. I want options. The Valkyrie answered, yes. Brunhild's voice stayed clipped. And keep the human fighters informed enough that they don't panic. Not enough that they start arguing. The Valkyrie nodded again. I heard one of the fighters nearby mutter, Brunhild's scary. I chuckled softly. Yet. She is. The match below got louder again as Zeus landed another clean hit to Adam's face. Adam staggered a fraction, then steadied. Blood ran down his chin. He wiped it again and stepped forward. Zeus smiled like he couldn't be happier. The human screamed Adam's name again, and the sound wasn't even cheering anymore. It was pleading. I stayed seated, posture steady, eyes locked on the ring, making small observations as the fight kept escalating, while Brunhild and her sisters quietly arranged the next pieces behind us and the human champions around me kept talking in short, tense bursts between punches. Chapter 9, 2 names, 1 lull. Zeus stopped for a moment. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't hesitation. It was the kind of pause a confident fighter took because he knew he could start again whenever he wanted. His feet stayed planted on the cracked stone, shoulders loose, grin wide. He rolled his neck once like he was loosening up for the next round. Adam didn't drop his guard. He stood a few steps away, bare chest rising and falling heavier now. Blood ran from his mouth and nose in thin lines, staining his chin and dripping onto his skin. His eyes stayed calm, fixed on Zeus without anger and without fear. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand again, slow and steady, then let the hand fall back to his side. The crowd reacted to the pause like they didn't know what to do with silence. Humans were still screaming, but the screams turned into strained chanting. Gods shouted Zeus's name, some laughing, some demanding he finish it. The noise was loud enough to feel in my ribs even while I sat among other fighters. I stayed leaned forward, elbows on my knees, coat open. My right shoulder still carried that worked ache from the first match. It wasn't getting worse. It just reminded me not to move suddenly without warming it up first. Behind our row, Brunhild's boots scraped lightly against stone. She had moved again. I didn't need to turn to know it. Her presence had a sharp way of taking up space. A Valkyrie stepped up beside her from the aisle, then another. Both were tense, but controlled, eyes flicking down to the ring and back to Brunhild. They weren't cheering. They were counting. Brunhild spoke low and clipped. This is the only lull we're getting. Decide now. One Valkyrie answered quietly, Adam is still standing. Brunhild's voice stayed flat. That's not an answer. The second Valkyrie swallowed, then spoke with more certainty. If he falls, we can deploy Candidate A immediately. Candidate B needs another minute. Brunhild's jaw tightened. Then Candidate B is not ready. The Valkyrie flinched slightly, then steadied. We can make her ready. You can't make anything, Brunhild replied, still quiet but harder. We move with what we have. I kept my gaze on the ring, but my attention still caught their words. Planning here was everything. I didn't like the idea of Adam falling, but Brunhild was right to prepare. A fighter beside me, broad-shouldered with a stiff posture, muttered, "They're already talking like he's dead." I smiled faintly without looking away. They're talking like they don't want to be late. He grunted, not satisfied. Another fighter leaned forward on the other side of me, voice low and tense. Who's next if he drops? I shrugged lightly. Ask them. He scowled. They won't tell us. I chuckled softly. Then they're being careful. Down on the ring, Zeus and Adam still hadn't moved. Zeus was looking up at the gods' stands, grinning like he was showing off. Adam was just watching him, breathing heavier but steady, feet planted in a simple stance. Zeus laughed and spread his arms slightly. How's that, everyone? Isn't he fun? The gods roared. Some humans shouted back insults that sounded desperate. Others just screamed Adam's name. Adam didn't react to Zeus's show. He just waited. Brunhild's voice rose slightly, still quiet, but more urgent behind us. 2 names. Now. One Valkyrie answered, fast. We can pair with. Brunhild cut in immediately. No. Don't give me a list. The Valkyrie's throat moved as she swallowed. Then, the one who doesn't get pulled into a god's pace. Brunhild's eyes narrowed. Name. The Valkyrie forced it out. The calm one. Brunhild's voice turned sharp. Name. The second Valkyrie stepped in, voice steadier. We have 2 that fit. One is aggressive but disciplined. One is patient and stubborn. Brunhild's gaze snapped to her. Names. The Valkyrie answered, low, the patient one. And the disciplined one. Brunhild's fingers tightened behind her back. I asked for names. There was a beat of silence. I finally turned my head slightly, just enough to look at Brunhild from the corner of my eye. She was staring at the Valkyries like she was willing them to stop wasting time. I gave her an easy grin. You're scaring them. Brunhild's eyes flicked to me. They need to be scared. I chuckled softly. Fair. One Valkyrie finally spoke, voice quiet but clear, committing. She said 2 names. Brunhild listened without blinking, then nodded once. Good. Prepare both. Quietly. If Adam goes down, I choose based on how Zeus finishes. The Valkyries nodded quickly, relieved to have direction. Brunhild added, and keep the fighters from arguing. One Valkyrie glanced toward our row. A few of the human champions were already muttering, tension leaking out. I'll handle it, Brunhild said, and stepped forward down the aisle. I turned my eyes back to the ring. Zeus shifted his stance again, rolling his shoulders. His grin didn't fade, but his eyes looked sharper now. He was still enjoying himself, but the pause was ending. Adam's chest rose and fell. He wiped his mouth again, then lifted his eyes to Zeus with the same calm focus. Zeus stepped in. Adam moved too. The lull ended like a switch flipped. Zeus's fist snapped out, wrong fast. Adam leaned away by a narrow margin, but the edge of the strike clipped his cheek again. Blood sprayed lightly. Adam didn't stumble. He stepped forward and punched back with the same timing. His fist landed on Zeus's face. Zeus laughed loudly, delighted, and bounced back. Yes. The gods roared. Some sounded furious. Some sounded thrilled. Zeus sounded thrilled. Humans screamed Adam's name again, voices cracking. I leaned forward slightly more, still calm, hand resting near Griffin's hilt out of habit. I wasn't gripping it. My fingers were loose. A fighter behind me muttered, "This is insane." Another replied, voice tight. "He's copying a god." I shrugged faintly. "That's Adam." The first fighter snapped, "That doesn't explain it." I smiled, still relaxed. "Does it need to?" They didn't answer. Their attention snapped back to the ring as Zeus surged again. Zeus threw a tight chain of punches. Adam dodged most, but took a clean hit to the ribs that made his torso bend. He slid back on the broken stone and caught himself with a small adjustment of his feet. That adjustment mattered. It was the first time he'd looked like footing was becoming a problem. The humans screamed in panic. Zeus laughed, happy, and pressed in again. Adam straightened and stepped forward, calm. He copied and landed a punch to Zeus's chest. Zeus's grin widened. Good. I felt a small tightening in my chest, a tiny leak of concern that didn't change my face. Adam was still moving forward, still matching, but the damage was piling up. Zeus could keep raising the pace. Adam's body couldn't do that forever. A fighter next to me, the broad-shouldered one, spoke again through clenched teeth. If Adam dies, we lose the crowd. I glanced at him briefly, still smiling faintly. The crowd doesn't fight. He shot me a look. The crowd decides if the next man walks out steady or shaking. I chuckled softly. Then the next man better not shake. He looked like he wanted to argue, then turned back to the ring. Zeus stopped again for a half-second mid-bounce, then snapped forward with another burst of speed. His fist landed cleanly on Adam's face. Adam's head snapped back and he slid farther this time, leaving a visible trail in the dust. He stopped, still upright. Blood ran more freely now. The humans screamed. Some sounded like they were begging him to stop. Adam wiped his mouth again, slow, steady. He stepped forward again. Zeus laughed, pleased. They clashed again. Punch, dodge, counter, hit. The arena floor kept cracking under them. Dust hung in the air, never settling, stirred by their constant movement. In the fighters section, the tension started to leak into voices more openly. A lean fighter a few seats away said, voice low but sharp, why doesn't he change tactics? Another answered, he doesn't have another tactic. A third muttered, he could run. The first snapped back, run where? I listened without turning, then spoke casually, voice calm. Adam's not running. He's not built for that. The lean fighter glanced at me. You speak like you know him. I shrugged. We talked. He's simple. The fighter scowled. Simple gets you killed. I smiled faintly. Sometimes. Sometimes it gets you through. He didn't like that answer. He turned away. Zeus laughed again and shouted, you're still coming. Great. Adam answered simply, yes. The god's side yelled louder. The humans yelled louder. The noise didn't feel like cheering anymore. It felt like pressure. Brunhild returned to the aisle behind our row, moving fast but controlled. She stopped and looked down at the ring, then glanced across the fighters section. Her eyes caught a few fighters who were starting to argue more loudly now. Brunhild's voice cut in, low but sharp. Quiet. The arguing stopped immediately, like someone had turned off a switch. One fighter tried to mutter anyway, but Brunhild's stare pinned him down. She didn't need to threaten. Her presence was enough. I grinned up at her. See? You handled it. Brunhild didn't look at me. Watch the ring. I chuckled softly. I am. Zeus threw another sequence. Adam dodged most, then took a clean hit to the chest that drove him back a full step. His feet scraped. His heel caught on a chunk of broken stone, and for a split second, his balance wavered. The humans screamed like that moment would decide everything. Adam corrected immediately. He planted his foot, straightened, and stepped forward again. Zeus laughed, delighted, like he'd noticed the stumble and liked it. Oh! Zeus said happily. Getting tired? Adam replied calmly, no. Zeus grinned. Good. He searched again. This time he threw a punch that didn't go for Adam's head. It went for his midsection, tight and heavy. Adam tried to shift. The punch still landed, digging into ribs. Adam's torso folded slightly, and blood sprayed from his mouth. He slid back again and took a knee, palm brushing the stone for balance. The humans screamed, louder than ever, voices breaking. The gods roared, hungry. Zeus tilted his head, still smiling. You okay? Adam looked up, blood on his chin. Yes. He stood again. The human stands roared with desperate relief. I felt my fingers tap once again against the bench, then still. My face stayed relaxed, but my eyes sharpened. Adam was steady, but the cost was visible now in every breath, every wipe of his mouth. Brunhild's posture stiffened behind us. One of the Valkyries approached her again, quiet and quick. Both candidates are prepared. Brunhild didn't look away from the ring. Good. Keep them out of sight. No noise. The Valkyrie nodded and moved away. A fighter beside me whispered, voice tense, they're ready to send someone out. I nodded lightly. Yet? He asked, do you think Adam can still win? I kept my gaze on the ring. Zeus was bouncing again, grinning, hands raised. Adam stood still, breathing heavy, blood visible. I answered honestly, still sounding like myself. He can. But he's taking too much. The fighter's mouth tightened. That's not an answer. I smiled faintly. It's the only one I've got. Zeus moved again. Adam copied again. The exchange kept going. Between bursts, there was another short lull, only a heartbeat, but it was enough for the fighters' section to breathe. Someone behind me murmured, if Adam loses, who's next? Another voice snapped, shut up. Brunhild said quiet. A third voice replied, bitter, quiet doesn't change anything. I turned my head slightly and smiled at the third voice, keeping it light. Quiet helps people think. The voice didn't respond, but the muttering eased. Brunhild shifted again, stepping down the aisle to speak to another Valkyrie near the exit corridor. Her voice stayed low, practical. If Adam falls, we move immediately. No speeches. No delays. The Valkyrie nodded. Brunhild added, if Adam wins, we still move. The gods will respond. The Valkyrie nodded again. I kept watching the ring. Zeus was still smiling. Adam was still stepping forward. Their fists met again with a sharp crack. Adam's body took another hit, then returned one. Zeus laughed, delighted. The humans screamed. The gods roared. I stayed seated among the human champions, posture steady, expression relaxed, eyes fixed on the fight, listening to Brunhild's quiet coordination behind me and the fighters' tense, restrained talk around me as the second match kept grinding forward without giving anyone a real chance to breathe. Chapter 10, Quiet Briefing, Harder Hits. Zeus and Adam separated by 2 steps, and the arena breathed for half a second. It wasn't peace. It was just space. Zeus rolled his shoulders again, grin still wide, eyes bright like he was having a great time. Adam stood across from him with blood on his chin and chest, breathing heavier, but still upright. His face stayed gentle, calm, and his eyes didn't waver. He wiped his mouth again with the back of his hand, then let his arm fall naturally. The crowd didn't know what to do with the gap, so it filled it with noise. Humans screamed Adam's name in a raw, strained rhythm. Some were crying openly. Gods shouted Zeus's name and demanded more, and a few laughed like it was entertainment they'd paid for. I stayed seated in the fighters section, leaning forward, elbows on my knees, coat open. My right shoulder still had that warm ache from earlier, and the faint sting on my side and calf still sat under the fabric like an annoying reminder. Nothing serious. Just enough to make me keep my posture loose. Behind our row, Brunhild moved again. I didn't hear her first. I felt her presence. She had a way of making the air behind you feel tighter. She stopped near the aisle behind our row and spoke quietly to a Valkyrie at her side. I recognized the posture of someone who had already been told to be ready. The Valkyrie's hands were steady, but her eyes were sharp. Brunhild's voice was low and practical. Which one is calmer right now? The Valkyrie answered without delay. Both are ready. One is restless. One is controlled. Brunhild's jaw tightened. Restless is a risk. The Valkyrie nodded. Yes. Brunhild kept her eyes on the ring as Zeus and Adam shifted their feet, still not fully re-engaging. Then we go with the controlled one. The Valkyrie's eyes widened a fraction, then she nodded once. Understood. Brunhild added, still quiet, bring them to the corridor. Not the open aisle. I don't want the fighters section buzzing. The Valkyrie moved quickly, slipping away behind the seats. A broad-shouldered fighter 2 seats to my left muttered, voice tight, she picked already. I smiled faintly without looking away from the ring. Yet. He leaned toward me slightly. You know who? I shrugged lightly. No. He didn't believe me, but he didn't argue. His eyes stayed on Adam. Another fighter, leaner and more restless, spoke low, almost irritated. If Adam's still standing, why pick anyone? I chuckled softly. Because you don't want to be late. He scowled. That sounds like giving up. I turned my head slightly to look at him, still wearing a relaxed grin. Planning isn't giving up. It's just being ready. He opened his mouth, then shut it, and looked back down at the ring with a tense expression. Zeus clapped his hands once, loud enough to cut through the crowd for a beat. He looked up toward the gods' stands and laughed. Come on! Zeus shouted happily. You're all too serious. The gods roared. Zeus turned back to Adam and bounced lightly on his toes again, shoulders loose, fists raised. Adam remained still for a heartbeat, breathing heavy, blood visible, then he stepped forward calmly. I exhaled through my nose, staying relaxed. The gap ended. Zeus surged forward with wrong fast movement, and his fist snapped toward Adam's face. Adam's head shifted, avoiding by a narrow margin, but the punch still grazed his cheek. Blood sprayed lightly. Adam didn't stumble. He stepped in and punched back with the same timing. His fist landed on Zeus's face. Zeus's head snapped back slightly, and his grin widened like he'd just been given something he wanted. Yes. Zeus laughed. That's it. The crowd erupted again. Humans screamed with a mix of relief and fear. Gods roared with anger and excitement. Zeus moved again, faster than before, chaining punches in a tight series aimed at Adam's face and chest. Adam dodged most with small movements, but one punch landed cleanly in his ribs. Adam's torso bent slightly. He slid back on the broken stone and stopped. He didn't fall. He wiped his mouth again, slower now, and stepped forward. Zeus laughed, delighted, and pressed again. I felt the tension in the fighters' section rise like heat. People were trying not to speak, but their bodies gave them away. Fists clenched. Knees bounced. Shoulders tightened. A fighter behind me whispered, he took another rib shot. Another answered, voice tight, he's still walking. I kept my gaze on the ring and spoke lightly, just loud enough for the people near me to hear. Adam doesn't stop because it hurts. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me grunted. He might stop because his ribs break. Yeah, I replied calmly. That's the problem. Zeus threw another sequence. Adam dodged the first two, copied the third, landed it, then took a clean hit to the chest that drove him back a full step. His feet scraped hard. He corrected his footing, but the correction was sharper than before, less smooth. The human stands screamed in panic. Zeus tilted his head, grinning like he noticed the small slip. Oh? Getting shaky? Adam replied simply, no. He stepped forward again. Zeus laughed, pleased, and attacked again. Adam took another hit, this one to the shoulder, then returned a copied strike. Zeus absorbed it with a laugh and kept moving. The pace was brutal now. Even the crowd's reactions were starting to lag behind the action. Sound came in waves rather than clean beats. Behind us, Brunhild moved again, stepping down the aisle toward the corridor entrance. She didn't run. She didn't show panic. But her speed was purposeful. I shifted slightly in my seat, rolling my shoulder once. The joint protested warmly, then settled. I kept my posture loose. A voice to my right, low and tense, asked, "Do you think Zeus is going to kill him?" I glanced at the speaker, a human champion with a hard stare and a tight jaw, then looked back to the ring. "Zeus is enjoying this," I said casually. "That means he'll keep pushing." "That's not an answer," the fighter replied, frustration leaking. I smiled faintly. "It's the only one that matters." Down below, Zeus landed another hit to Adam's ribs. Adam slid back and dropped to one knee, palm brushing the stone for balance. The human stands screamed louder than before, voices cracking. Zeus tilted his head, still smiling. "You okay?" Adam looked up calmly. "Yes." He stood again. I watched the motion closely. Adam didn't wobble, but the effort was visible in his breath. His chest rose and fell heavier. Blood dripped from his mouth onto his skin and the stone. The gods roared, some demanding Zeus finish it, others laughing like they loved the cruelty. Zeus laughed, delighted, and surged again. Adam met him again. Punch. Dodge. Punch. Counter. Another rib shot landed. Adam slid back and dropped to a knee again, steadier this time, like he'd decided it was faster to stabilize that way than to risk a stumble. The human stands screamed again, now sounding like pleading. The fighters' section grew restless. The lean fighter near me muttered, "He's kneeling now." I nodded. "Yet." He snapped, "That's bad." I shrugged lightly. "It's not good." He stared at me like he wanted me to say something comforting. I didn't. Adam stood again, wiped his mouth again, and stepped forward again. Zeus laughed and clapped his hands once mid-motion, like he was praising him. "You're the best!" Zeus shouted happily. Adam replied calmly, "Thank you." A few fighters in our section made sounds of disbelief. Not at the politeness. At the fact that Adam still had breath to speak at all. Behind us, footsteps returned. Brunhild came back into view near the top of the aisle, and she wasn't alone. A Valkyrie walked beside her, and behind them, partially shielded by the aisle angle and the standing figures, was the chosen backup fighter. Brunhild kept them low and out of the main line of sight, exactly like she'd ordered. She leaned toward the fighter and spoke quietly, quick and practical. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. "No speeches," Brunhild said. "You go out calm. You don't chase. You don't get baited by the gods' noise." The fighter nodded once. The Valkyrie beside Brunhild spoke in a whisper, "Voland is ready on command." Brunhild nodded without looking away from Adam and Zeus. Good. The chosen fighter's posture stayed controlled. No bouncing, no restless shifting. Just stillness and readiness. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me noticed them and murmured, "So that's who she picked." I didn't look back fully, but I smiled faintly. Yet? He asked, they ready? I shrugged. They look ready. He exhaled hard, then focused on the ring again, like he didn't want to be caught watching preparations while Adam was still fighting. Brunhild spoke one more time to the chosen fighter, voice low and flat. If Adam wins, you stand down. If Adam falls, you go immediately. You don't hesitate. The fighter nodded again. Brunhild turned her head slightly and scanned the fighters' section, eyes sharp. She caught a few anxious faces, a few muttering mouths. Her voice cut low and firm. Quiet. It wasn't loud, but it carried through the section like a knife. The muttering stopped. I grinned up at her, amused. You're good at that. Brunhild didn't smile. She returned her gaze to the ring. Watch. I chuckled softly. I am. Down below, Zeus surged again. This time the punches came in a tighter rhythm, and the hits landed more often. Adam dodged what he could, copied what he could, but Zeus's pace was forcing the cost higher and higher. Adam took a hit to the face. Blood sprayed. He slid back and dropped to one knee again. The human stands screamed, and the sound was strained enough that it made my skin tighten slightly. Adam stood again. Zeus laughed again. They clashed again. The pattern was relentless, and the pauses between exchanges were getting shorter. Then Zeus stopped again, just a heartbeat, grinning wide, shoulders loose. Adam stood across from him, breathing heavy, blood visible, but still calm. That tiny lull returned. In the fighters' section, the tension spilled into words again despite Brunhild's command. People didn't shout, but they spoke in low, tight voices. A fighter behind me said, if he dies like this, it's pointless. Another snapped, it's not pointless. A third replied, it's still a loss. I turned my head slightly and spoke with an easy calm. If you're going to talk, talk quieter, I said lightly. They went silent immediately, partly because of my tone, partly because Brunhild's presence still sat behind them like a weight. The lean fighter near me leaned closer and asked, voice low, you're acting like you've seen this kind of thing. I smiled faintly. I've seen strong people do stupid things. He frowned. Is Adam doing something stupid? I kept my gaze on the ring. No. He's doing what he does. The lean fighter pressed, then what's the mistake? I shrugged lightly. Zeus is enjoying the fact that Adam keeps matching him. That's the trap. Adam doesn't care about traps. The fighter stared at the ring, jaw tight. So Adam loses because he doesn't care. I shook my head slowly. No. He loses if his body quits. The fighter didn't answer. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't find a clean one. On the ring, Zeus moved again, ending the lull. He punched Adam in the chest cleanly. Adam slid back hard, feet scraping, and this time he dropped to both knees for a brief moment, palms touching the stone. The human stands screamed in outright panic. Zeus tilted his head, grin still wide. Still okay? Adam lifted his head slowly. Blood dripped from his mouth onto the stone. His eyes remained calm. Yes, Adam said. He pushed himself up again, steady but visibly strained. I felt a small tightening in my chest again, a tiny leak of concern that I kept inside. My face stayed relaxed. My posture stayed loose. But my attention was sharp enough that I was tracking every breath Adam took. Behind us, Brunhild's chosen backup fighter remained still, watching, ready. The Valkyrie beside them kept her hands close, prepared to initiate the Vollend the moment Brunhild gave the word. Brunhild's voice, low and clipped, went to the chosen fighter again. If he drops and doesn't rise immediately, you move. The fighter nodded once. Zeus surged again, grinning. Adam stepped forward again, calm. They collided again, fists snapping through the air. Zeus landed another hit to Adam's ribs. Adam's torso bent. He slid back and dropped to one knee again, faster this time, like his body had accepted that kneeling was safer than stumbling. He stood again. He copied and landed a hit on Zeus. Zeus laughed, delighted, and hit him again. The crowd noise kept swelling and collapsing, like it couldn't find a steady rhythm. In the fighters section, the conversation stayed restrained but constant, quick bursts between impacts. A broad-shouldered fighter muttered, "If Zeus is doing this to Adam, what does he do to the next?" Another answered, "Depends who the next is." The first snapped, "Does it matter?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah. It matters." They looked at me. I shrugged lightly. Different fights. Different plans. The broad-shouldered fighter frowned. "Plans don't matter if you get hit." I chuckled softly. "Plans matter even more then." He didn't like that answer, but he turned back to the ring. Adam took another hit and dropped to a knee again. He stood again. Zeus laughed again. And Brunhild stayed behind our row with her backup chosen, everything quiet and ready, while Adam continued walking forward and Zeus continued pushing harder, and the fighters section remained tense, controlled only by Brunhild's presence and the fact that none of us could look away. Chapter 11, Quiet Orders, Faster Hands. Adam dropped to one knee again, then pushed himself up with the same calm look on his face. He didn't rush the rise. He didn't shake his head like he was trying to clear it. He simply stood, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and stepped forward like he hadn't just taken another hit that would have folded most people. Zeus laughed loudly, pleased, and rolled his shoulders again as if he was warming up. The crowd noise surged in two different directions at the same time. Humans screamed Adam's name like it was the only thing holding him together. Gods shouted Zeus's name like they wanted blood and entertainment in the same breath. The sound never really stopped now. It just changed tone whenever a punch landed. I stayed seated with my elbows on my knees, watching the ring. My coat was still torn at the side. The cloth moved lightly with the wind from the arena's open air, and every time I shifted my posture, I felt that warm ache in my right shoulder and the faint sting along my side and calf. It didn't distract me. It just sat there, reminding me I'd already spent real effort today. Behind our row, Brunhild leaned toward the chosen backup fighter and the Valkyrie standing beside him. They kept themselves low and out of the direct line of sight from the stands, but not so far that they couldn't move fast. Brunhild's voice stayed quiet, clipped, and practical. "You're going to the corridor now," she said. The backup fighter nodded once, expression controlled. The Valkyrie beside him nodded as well, hands close to her sides, ready. Brunhild added, "You do not step into the open until I signal. Not before. Not because the crowd gets loud. Not because you feel impatient." The backup fighter's eyes stayed steady. "Understood." I heard the broad-shouldered fighter next to me mutter, barely audible, "She's treating him like a bomb." I smiled faintly and kept my gaze on the ring. Better than treating him like a hero. The broad-shouldered fighter shot me a look. I grinned at him without moving much. "Heroes do dumb stuff." He stared at me for a beat, then looked back to the ring, jaw tight. Brunhild started moving down the aisle, guiding the backup and the Valkyrie toward the corridor entrance behind the fighters section. She didn't touch them. She didn't need to. Her pace and posture were enough to keep them in step. As they passed behind me, I glanced back slightly. The backup fighter kept his eyes forward, not scanning faces, not soaking in attention. He looked like someone who understood that stepping out too early could ruin everything. The Valkyrie kept close, her expression set. Brunhild gave one more quiet instruction as they neared the corridor. When I raise 2 fingers, you come out. When I raise 1, you stay. Don't guess. Don't assume. The backup fighter nodded once. They slipped into the corridor, out of view. Brunhild stayed near the entrance for a moment, watching the ring, then turned her head and scanned the fighters section again. Her eyes landed on a few people who looked ready to start whispering loudly again. Her voice cut low. Quiet. It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The whole section tightened and shut up again. I chuckled softly under my breath, amused. Then Zeus stopped. Not fully, but enough that the pace eased for a moment. He took 2 light steps back and lifted his hands, palms open, as if he was telling Adam and the whole arena to calm down. All right, Zeus said happily, voice carrying. Let's breathe. Gods laughed and shouted. Humans didn't laugh. They screamed anyway, like they didn't trust pauses. Adam didn't chase Zeus when Zeus stepped back. He stayed where he was, shoulders rising and falling heavier, blood still running down his chin and chest. He wiped his mouth again, then took a slow breath in through his nose. He looked steady, but there was work in it now. His ribs had taken too many hits. His face had taken too many clean punches. He wasn't collapsing, but his body was paying. Zeus tilted his head and smiled at him. You're still polite even now. Adam answered calmly. Yes. Zeus laughed, pleased. That's great. Humans usually scream. Adam glanced briefly toward the human stands. The humans were screaming his name so hard it sounded like pain. He looked back at Zeus. They're worried. Zeus's grin widened. They should be. This is fun. I kept my eyes on Zeus's shoulders and stance, even while I listened. Zeus was relaxed, but his posture wasn't lazy. It was ready. His weight sat perfectly balanced on the cracked stone. His hands were open right now, but his fingers flexed like he could snap into a punch chain instantly. The lull gave the fighters section a chance to breathe too, and of course that meant people started talking again in low voices. The lean fighter near me, restless and irritated, whispered, "He's talking now. Like it's a friendly match." A calmer fighter a few seats away answered, "That's Zeus. He likes attention." The lean fighter snapped quietly, "He likes hurting people." I scratched my cheek and kept it light. Both can be true. The lean fighter looked at me like he wanted to argue. I gave him a relaxed grin. If you're going to get mad, save it for your own match. He looked away, annoyed, but he stopped talking for a moment. Zeus stretched his arms above his head casually, then dropped them and smiled at Adam again. You know what I like about you. Adam didn't change expression. No. Zeus laughed. You keep coming forward. Adam nodded. Yes. Zeus stepped closer, still not attacking, just talking. Most humans try to be clever. You're not trying to be clever. Adam's voice stayed even. I'm trying to win. Zeus clapped once, delighted. Good answer. He leaned forward slightly. But you're getting hurt. Adam's gaze stayed steady. Yes. Zeus's grin widened again like he loved that honesty. Then why don't you stop? Adam's answer came without delay. Because I don't want to lose. The human stands roared louder, not because the answer was fancy, but because it was simple and it was Adam. The gods shouted too, some laughing, some irritated. In the fighters section, the broad-shouldered fighter next to me muttered, "He's going to die from stubbornness." I shrugged lightly. He might. The broad-shouldered fighter's eyes narrowed. You're too casual about that. I gave him a calm smile. I'm not casual. I'm just not panicking. He looked like he wanted to say more, but Zeus moved again and everyone's attention snapped back down. Zeus's grin stayed wide, but his eyes sharpened. Okay, he said happily. Break's over. Adam's posture tightened just a little. Not fear. Just readiness. Zeus burst forward. The wrong fast motion came immediately, and his fist appeared in front of Adam's face with almost no visible wind up. Adam tried to tilt away and still got clipped. Blood sprayed. Zeus didn't stop at one punch. He chained into a tight series. Face. Chest. Ribs. A rhythm designed to force errors. Adam dodged what he could with small movements. He copied a punch and returned it, landing on Zeus's cheek. Zeus laughed, delighted, and punched again. Adam took a clean hit to the ribs and dropped to one knee quickly, palm touching stone to stabilize. The human screamed like a wave breaking. Zeus tilted his head, still smiling. You okay? Adam looked up calmly. Yes. He stood again. Brunhild, still near the corridor entrance behind our row, shifted her posture. Her gaze flicked away from the ring for the briefest moment, toward the corridor where the backup waited, then back to Adam. Her hand rose slightly, then lowered again without forming a clear signal. She wasn't calling anyone yet. I leaned forward a fraction more, eyes steady. I could feel the tension tighten in the fighters section again. People were holding their breath in short bursts, then letting it out when Adam rose. The lean fighter whispered again, "He's kneeling too often." A calmer fighter replied, "He's still standing." The lean fighter hissed, "That won't matter when he can't get up." I smiled faintly and spoke softly, not loud enough to draw Brunhild's annoyance. "Then he better not stay down." The lean fighter looked at me with irritation. "That's not advice." I shrugged lightly. "It's what's happening." Zeus increased the pace again. He stopped laughing as much while he punched. The grin remained, but the rhythm tightened. The punches came faster, closer together, less space between them. This was no longer only play. It was still enjoyment, but it was also pressure. Adam copied the timing again and returned hits that made Zeus's head snap back slightly. Zeus laughed again when Adam landed those, like he loved being hit back. Then Zeus hit Adam in the chest cleanly and hard. Adam slid back farther than before, feet scraping over cracked stone. He dropped to one knee, then to both knees for a heartbeat, palms brushing the floor to steady. The human stands screamed in outright panic. Adam lifted his head and said calmly, "Yes," before Zeus even asked. Then he pushed himself up again. His rise was slower this time. Not shaky, but slower. That mattered. Brunhild's eyes narrowed. Her right hand lifted slightly, 2 fingers almost forming, then stopped. She lowered it again. She was measuring. Timing. Deciding. I kept my face relaxed, but I felt that small tightening in my chest again. Not fear. Just awareness. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me muttered, "He's slowing." I nodded once. Yet. He clenched his jaw. "That's it then." I kept my grin, but it thinned a little. "Not yet." He stared at me. "You think he can still?" Zeus punched Adam in the face again, cutting off the question with impact noise. Adam's head snapped back. Blood sprayed. He slid, dropped to one knee again. He stood again. The human screamed his name again. The sound was ragged now, throats tearing. Zeus bounced lightly on his toes, laughing. "You're amazing." Adam replied calmly, "Thank you." In the fighters section, someone behind me let out a strained laugh, half disbelief. Another muttered, "He's still thanking him." I didn't turn. I just said, softly, "That's Adam." Zeus surged again with a wrong fast chain that landed more clean hits now. Adam dodged some, copied some, but the sheer density of punches meant he was getting tagged more often. Ribs. Chest. Jaw. Adam dropped to one knee again, then rose. He dropped again, then rose again. Each rise took a little longer. Brunhild's posture stiffened. She turned her head slightly toward the corridor entrance, eyes sharp. Her hand lifted to waist height and held there, fingers poised. A Valkyrie stood near her, watching her hand instead of the ring, ready to run the signal down the corridor instantly. The fighters section started talking in low, tense bursts again. People couldn't help it. A fighter a few seats away whispered, "If Adam falls, who's next?" Another snapped, "Shut up." A third answered, "We need to know." I turned my head slightly and smiled at them, keeping it casual. "You'll know when someone walks out." They fell quiet, partly embarrassed, partly tense. Zeus stopped again for a short lull, breathing a little heavier himself now, still grinning. He stretched his neck side to side and laughed. "You're really making me work." Adam's breathing was heavier. He wiped his mouth again and nodded. "Yes." Zeus's grin widened. "Good." He pointed a thumb at himself, casual. "I'm Zeus." Adam blinked once, then nodded again. "I know." Zeus burst out laughing, like that was the funniest answer he'd ever heard. The gods side laughed with him, some relieved that Zeus was still enjoying himself, some irritated that he hadn't ended it. The humans screamed again, desperate. In the fighters section, the lean fighter muttered, "He's playing with him." I nodded slightly. "Yet." The lean fighter's eyes narrowed. "Then why doesn't he finish?" I shrugged lightly. "Because he doesn't want it to end." The lean fighter looked disgusted. "That's sick." I smiled faintly. "It is." Zeus ended the lull with another sudden wrong fast lunge. He punched Adam in the ribs cleanly. Adam folded slightly and dropped to one knee, palm touching stone. He pushed up. This rise was slow enough that the human stands screamed even louder, the sound breaking into sobs and shouts. Adam stood fully, wiped his mouth again, then stepped forward anyway. Zeus laughed, delighted, and punched again. Adam copied and landed a hit on Zeus's cheek. Zeus's head snapped back, and he laughed even louder, like it made him happy. Brunhild's hand rose. 2 fingers extended clearly this time. The Valkyrie beside her moved instantly, turning toward the corridor entrance. But Brunhild held the signal for only a heartbeat. Adam, bloodied and breathing heavy, stayed upright and stepped forward again. Brunhild's fingers lowered back to 1, then to none. The Valkyrie halted at the threshold, tense, then stepped back. That was close. I felt my shoulders loosen slightly, still calm, but with that faint leak of tension easing. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me noticed. She almost sent him. "Yeah," I said quietly. He asked, "Why didn't she?" I kept my eyes on Adam. Because Adam got up. The broad-shouldered fighter's jaw tightened. "That's all it takes." I chuckled softly. "That's what the rule is right now." Zeus punched again. Adam dropped to one knee again, faster than before. He rose again, slower than before. The rhythm was getting dangerous. Brunhild's gaze sharpened further. She wasn't blinking much now. She spoke quietly to the Valkyrie near her without looking away from the ring. "If he stays down longer than a breath, you run." The Valkyrie nodded once, lips pressed tight. In the fighters section, the low talking grew again, then cut off whenever Brunhild's attention flicked their way. A fighter to my right leaned in, voice low. "You're still smiling." I looked at him and grinned. Should I cry? He frowned. No. But... I shrugged lightly. If Adam sees the fighters section falling apart, it won't help him. The fighter stared for a beat, then looked back down at the ring. Zeus stopped again, another short lull. He laughed and waved at the god's stands like he was greeting old friends. Are you seeing this? Zeus shouted happily. Humans are tough. The gods roared, some angry, some laughing. Adam stood across from him, breathing heavy, blood dripping, eyes calm. Zeus looked at him again and smiled. You're still coming? Adam nodded. Yes. Zeus bounced lightly, grin wide. Good. Then Zeus surged again. The wrong fast sequence came in tight chains. Adam dodged two, got clipped by one, took a clean hit to the chest, then another to the ribs. Adam dropped to one knee, then both knees, palms down for a heartbeat. The human stands screamed like the world was ending. Adam lifted his head and pushed up again. This time the rise took longer. Not a stumble, not a collapse, but a clear, slow push. Brunhild's hand rose again. 2 fingers extended. The Valkyrie near her tensed and leaned toward the corridor. Adam stood fully at the last moment, wiped his mouth again, and stepped forward. Brunhild lowered her hand again, expression tight, and the Valkyrie eased back with visible strain. The fighters section let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. Zeus laughed loudly, delighted that Adam kept standing. He punched again. Adam copied and landed another hit. Zeus grinned wider and punched again. The crowd noise surged again, rough and constant. I stayed seated, posture steady, eyes locked on the ring, listening to Brunhild's quiet timing orders behind us and the fighters' restrained talk around me, while Adam kept walking forward and Zeus kept pushing the pace tighter and harder, and the corridor behind the seats stayed ready to spill the next fighter into the arena the moment Adam couldn't rise. Chapter 12, 2 fingers, 1 breath. Adam rose again. It took him longer this time, but he still did it without shaking. He planted one foot, pushed up with his legs, and straightened his back in a steady motion. Blood ran from his mouth and nose, streaking down his chin and dripping onto his chest and the cracked stone. His breathing was heavier, but his eyes stayed calm. Zeus laughed like he loved seeing it. You're great, Zeus said happily, bouncing lightly on his toes as if his joints didn't hurt at all. Adam wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and nodded once. Thank you. The crowd reacted like someone had struck a bell. Humans screamed Adam's name in a strained rhythm that sounded like it was ripping their throats. Gods shouted Zeus's name with a hungry edge. Some gods laughed like they were watching a favorite game. Others sounded angry that a human could still stand. I stayed seated in the fighters section, leaning forward with my elbows on my knees. My coat hung open. The tier at my side shifted slightly whenever I breathed. My right shoulder still had that warm ache, and the sting on my calf and side sat under my skin like a faint burn. Nothing I couldn't handle. Just reminders. Behind us, Brunhild stood near the corridor entrance with her posture tight and controlled. A Valkyrie stood close to her, watching Brunhild's hands more than the ring. The backup fighter was staged out of sight in the corridor, waiting for a signal. I didn't turn to look. I didn't need to. I could feel it in the way the fighters section held itself quieter than it wanted to. Zeus stepped forward again. Adam stepped forward too. They closed the gap and collided with another fast exchange, fists snapping through the air. Zeus's punches came in a wrong fast rhythm, skipping the normal signs that told you where a strike was going to come from. Adam copied and returned what he could, landing hits on Zeus's face and chest often enough to keep Zeus laughing. But the cost kept rising. Zeus landed a clean hit to Adam's ribs, then another to his chest. Adam slid back and dropped to one knee, palm touching the stone for balance. The human stands screamed in panic. Zeus tilted his head with that wide grin and asked casually, "You okay?" Adam looked up calmly. "Yes." He pushed up again. Slow, steady. Brunhild's hand rose behind us. 2 fingers extended. I felt the fighter's section tighten. A few people stopped breathing for a beat. Adam stood fully at the last moment and stepped forward again. Brunhild lowered her hand back down, her expression hard and focused. The Valkyrie near her halted her motion and eased back, tense. I let out a small breath through my nose, still calm. My smile stayed faint, but I could feel a small leak of tension in my chest. It wasn't fear. It was the simple understanding that the margin was getting thin. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me muttered, voice low, "That was too close." I nodded once without looking away from the ring. "Yet?" he asked, "how long can he keep doing that?" I shrugged lightly. "Depends on how hard Zeus wants to push." The fighter's jaw tightened. "So it depends on Zeus." I smiled faintly. "Mostly." Zeus pulled back again, and this time the pause was longer. He didn't look tired. He looked satisfied. He bounced once, then stopped and spread his hands, palms open, as if he was telling the whole arena to relax. "All right." Zeus called out happily. "Let's take a little break." The gods roared, laughing and cheering. Humans didn't laugh. They screamed anyway. Adam didn't chase Zeus when Zeus stepped back. He stood still, breathing heavy, blood dripping, and wiped his mouth again. His shoulders rose and fell in a steady pattern. He didn't look like he was losing his mind. He looked like he was working. Zeus tilted his head and smiled at him like he was having a conversation at a party. "You're still standing," Zeus said cheerfully. Adam nodded. "Yes." Zeus's grin widened. "You're really stubborn." Adam's voice stayed calm. "Yes." Zeus laughed and pointed at Adam like he'd just heard the best joke. "I like that. Most people argue or beg." Adam blinked once, then replied simply, "I'm not begging." The human stands roared in agreement, desperate and proud at the same time. The gods' side reacted with mixed noise. Some laughed. Some cursed. Some demanded Zeus end it. Zeus looked up toward his side of the stands, still smiling. "Hey, hey! Don't rush me!" That made some gods laugh louder and made others sound more irritated. I kept my eyes on Zeus's stance even in the lull. He was relaxed, but he was ready. His weight was balanced. His shoulders were loose in a way that meant he could launch instantly. Adam's feet stayed planted, stance simple, shoulders slightly lowered. He wasn't bouncing. He wasn't posturing. He was just there. In the fighters section, the lull let people talk more openly in low voices, even with Brunhild nearby. The lean fighter a few seats away whispered, "He's talking like he's not even trying to kill him." A calmer fighter answered, "Zeus is always like that." The lean fighter hissed, "That makes it worse." I chuckled softly and spoke without raising my voice. "If you're going to get mad, do it quietly." The lean fighter glanced at me, annoyed. "You're still joking." I grinned. "I'm not joking. I'm just not shouting." He looked away, still irritated, but he shut his mouth. Another fighter behind me whispered, "If Adam loses, who's next?" Someone else answered quickly, "Brunhild already picked." A third voice muttered, "Who?" The second snapped, "Does it matter? Whoever it is, they'd better not hesitate." I smiled faintly. "That part's true." A couple heads turned toward me. I didn't make a big deal of it. I kept my eyes on the ring. Zeus leaned forward slightly, still in the lull, and spoke to Adam in a cheerful tone. "You're getting hurt a lot," Zeus said lightly, like he was pointing out spilled wine. Adam nodded. Yes. Zeus laughed again. And you still keep coming? Adam answered, calm and simple. I want to win. The humans roared louder again, the sound rough and strained. Zeus clapped once, delighted. Good. I like that. He took a step closer, still not striking. But you know I can keep going too, right? Adam's eyes stayed steady. Yes. Zeus grinned wider. Then why don't you stop? Adam's answer came immediately. Because I don't want to lose. Zeus laughed so hard his shoulders shook. Great. That's great. He turned his head toward the gods' stands again like he wanted them to see his face. Did you hear that? Humans are fun. The gods roared, some with approval, some with anger. Behind us, Brunhild's voice cut in low and sharp, directed at the fighters section rather than the ring. Quiet, she said again. The section shut up quickly. I glanced back over my shoulder just enough to see her expression. It was controlled, but tight. Her eyes were focused on the fight, and her hands were positioned low near her waist, ready to signal again. I gave her a relaxed grin. You're really enjoying bossing people around. Brunhild didn't look at me. Watch. I chuckled softly. I am. Zeus ended the lull with no warning. He surged forward with wrong fast movement and snapped a punch toward Adam's face. Adam tried to tilt away and still got clipped. Blood sprayed. Zeus chained into a tight series immediately, fists moving in short, brutal arcs aimed at Adam's head, chest, and ribs. The air cracked from the speed. The stone under their feet trembled with each sudden shift. Adam dodged what he could. He copied and returned one punch, landing on Zeus's cheek. Zeus laughed, delighted, and hit him again. A rib shot landed cleanly. Adam dropped to one knee, palm touching stone. The human stands screamed as if they were all being hit too. Zeus tilted his head, still smiling. You okay? Adam looked up calmly. Yes. He pushed up again. His rise was slower. Brunhild's hand rose behind us. 2 fingers extended. The Valkyrie beside her leaned toward the corridor entrance, ready to run. Adam stood fully at the last moment and stepped forward again. Brunhild lowered her hand. The Valkyrie stopped, tense. I felt my fingers tap once against the bench, then still. My face stayed relaxed. My eyes stayed sharp. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me exhaled hard. That's twice. I nodded. Yet. He muttered, she's going to send the backup soon. I shrugged lightly. If Adam stays down too long, yet. He clenched his jaw. And if Adam gets up again, she won't. Right, I said casually. He stared at me. That's insane. I smiled faintly. It's the job. Zeus increased pressure again. The wrong fast chains came tighter, less space between strikes. Adam was still copying and still landing hits on Zeus, but Zeus was landing more clean hits now. The density was too high. Even perfect reads couldn't avoid everything forever. Zeus punched Adam in the chest. Adam slid back and dropped to one knee. Zeus punched again before Adam could fully rise, catching Adam's shoulder. Adam's body tightened and his knee dug into the stone. The humans screamed, ragged and desperate. Adam pushed up anyway, slowly, and stood. He wiped his mouth again and stepped forward again. Zeus laughed like he'd just been shown something he liked. Yes. Adam threw a copied punch and landed it on Zeus's face. Zeus's head snapped back slightly, and his grin widened even more. Good. The gods' side roared, some furious now. The humans roared too, desperate hope mixed with panic. Zeus surged again. Adam dodged too, took a clean hit to the ribs, then another to the chest. Adam slid back farther than before and dropped to both knees, palms touching stone this time. The human stands screamed like the air was breaking. I felt my chest tighten slightly. Not fear. Just the sense that this was the breath Brunhild had warned about. Adam lifted his head. Blood dripped onto the stone beneath his mouth. He pushed up. It was slower than any rise before. Brunhild's hand rose. 2 fingers extended, clear. The Valkyrie beside her moved, foot stepping toward the corridor entrance. Adam got 1 foot under himself. He pushed again. His shoulders trembled slightly for the first time I'd noticed, not from fear, but from effort. He stood. Brunhild lowered her hand again, jaw tight. The Valkyrie halted, tense, then stepped back. I let out a slow breath through my nose, still calm, but my smile thinned for a moment before returning. Zeus laughed loudly, delighted at the drama he was causing. "You're still here." Adam wiped his mouth again and answered calmly, "Yes." Zeus clapped once, thrilled, and attacked again. The next chain was even tighter. Punches snapped through the air in rapid rhythm. Adam dodged what he could and copied what he could. He landed another hit on Zeus's cheek. Zeus laughed and responded with a rib shot that made Adam fold slightly. Adam dropped to one knee again. He stood again. He stepped forward again. This was turning into a rhythm of its own: kneel, rise, step, exchange. The fighters' section strained to stay quiet. People's breathing was audible. Someone's foot kept tapping in nervous rhythm until Brunhild's gaze flicked their way and it stopped. Zeus stopped again for a slightly longer lull. He breathed heavier now too, but he still looked delighted. He rolled his neck and stretched his shoulders, then looked at Adam with a grin. "You're really tough," Zeus said cheerfully. Adam nodded, breathing heavy. "Thank you." Zeus laughed. "You keep thanking me." Adam replied simply, "You keep talking." A few humans in the stands laughed through their panic at that, a rough sound. Zeus's grin widened. "Fair." He stepped closer, hands loose, still not striking. "You're bleeding a lot." Adam wiped his mouth again, then nodded. "Yes." Zeus tilted his head. "Does it hurt?" Adam answered without hesitation. "Yes." Zeus laughed again, delighted by the honesty. "And you still come forward?" Adam's eyes stayed calm. "Yes." Zeus pointed at him with a playful expression. "You're my favorite human today." The gods' side made sharp sounds at that, some angry, some amused. The humans roared Adam's name again, louder, as if they were trying to drown out Zeus's praise. In the fighters section, the lull sparked more low talk again. A fighter behind me whispered, "Zeus is going to kill him," smiling the whole time. Another answered, voice rough, "Adam's going to make him work for it." A third muttered, "Work doesn't matter if you still die." I turned my head slightly and grinned at the third voice, keeping it light. "Then don't die in your match." The voice went quiet, partly embarrassed, partly tense. The lean fighter near me leaned in again, voice low. "You're acting like this is normal." I shrugged lightly. "It's not normal." He pressed, "Then why aren't you reacting?" I smiled, still relaxed. "Because reacting doesn't change what's happening." He looked like he wanted to call that cold, but he didn't. He just stared at the ring. Brunhild, behind us, spoke quietly to the Valkyrie beside her, not taking her eyes off the ring. "If Zeus starts chaining while Adam is on the ground, we deploy immediately. I won't wait for a slow rise." The Valkyrie nodded once, face tight. "Understood." Brunhild's voice stayed clipped. "The backup stays at the corridor mouth." Not in the arena line. I want them ready but unseen. The Valkyrie nodded again and shifted her stance slightly, preparing to move. Zeus ended the lull with another sudden surge. Wrong fast chain snapped in. Adam dodged two, took one clean hit to the face, then another to the chest. Adam slid back and dropped to one knee. Zeus didn't wait this time. He stepped in and threw another punch toward Adam's head while Adam was still low. The human stand screamed in outright panic. Adam twisted and avoided by a narrow margin, then pushed up, but the rise was messy for the first time. Not falling, but a brief stumble in footing as he stood. He corrected immediately and stepped forward again anyway. Brunhild's hand rose so fast it looked sharp. 2 fingers extended. The Valkyrie stepped toward the corridor mouth. Adam stayed standing. Brunhild lowered her hand again, but she didn't look relieved. She looked more controlled, more strict. Her timing rules were tightening. Zeus laughed like he loved that he'd forced the moment. Close. Adam wiped his mouth again, breathing heavy, and answered calmly, yes. Zeus punched again. Adam copied and landed a hit on Zeus's cheek. Zeus laughed, delighted, and punched again. Adam took another rib shot and dropped to one knee again. He stood again. Slower. The crowd noise surged again, rough and constant. I stayed seated, posture steady, eyes locked on the ring, keeping my face relaxed so the fighters around me didn't spiral, while Brunhild kept her hand ready with 2 fingers that seemed to appear more often now, and the corridor behind us held the backup fighter in silence, waiting for the single breath where Adam wouldn't rise. Chapter 13, The Rule Tightens. Adam dropped to one knee again. This time it wasn't a clean, calm kneel where he looked like he chose it. It was still controlled, but the timing was forced. Zeus's punch had landed in his ribs with enough weight that Adam's torso tightened and his foot slid on broken stone before he caught himself. His palm brushed the ground. Dust clung to his fingers. The human stand screamed like the arena itself had cracked open. Zeus laughed loudly, still smiling, and stepped in. He didn't wait for Adam to rise. His fist snapped toward Adam's head while Adam was still low. Adam twisted his shoulders and shifted his head just enough that the punch grazed instead of landing clean. Blood sprayed anyway. The hit wasn't full, but it was contact, and contact at this pace mattered. Adam stayed on one knee for a heartbeat longer, steadying his footing, then pushed up. His rise was slower. Not trembling, but visibly worked. He planted his foot, straightened, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand again. Blood smeared across his skin, darker now where it kept mixing with dust and sweat. Zeus bounced lightly, grin wide, eyes bright. Close. Zeus said happily, like he was praising a trick. Adam looked at him calmly. Yes. Zeus laughed again, delighted that Adam was still answering. I stayed seated in the fighters section with my elbows on my knees, watching every shift of Zeus's shoulders, every change in Adam's stance. My coat hung open, torn at the side. My right shoulder still carried that warm ache from the first match, and the sting on my calf and side sat under my skin as faint irritation. I kept my posture loose, like I was just watching a sparring match on a sunny deck, even though the noise in the arena was anything but relaxed. Behind us, Brunhild's hand rose fast. 2 fingers extended. The Valkyrie beside her stepped toward the corridor entrance instantly. But Adam was already upright. Brunhild lowered her hand again, jaw tight. It didn't look like relief. It looked like she was tightening her timing. The fighters section breathed out in a strained wave. A few people muttered without meaning to. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me whispered, "He hit him while he was down." I nodded once. Yet. The fighter's hands clenched. That's new. I kept my eyes on the ring. Zeus is changing the rules because he can. The fighter's jaw tightened harder. Then we're done. I smiled faintly. Not yet. He shot me a look like he didn't understand how I could keep that tone. I didn't explain. I just watched. Zeus took another quick step in and snapped a punch toward Adam's chest. Adam shifted, but the punch still clipped him. It wasn't a full strike. It still made Adam's body tighten. Adam countered immediately, copying the same timing, and his fist landed on Zeus's cheek. Zeus's head snapped back slightly. Zeus laughed louder than before. Yes! Zeus shouted happily. Good! The gods roared with mixed sound. Some sounded thrilled. Some sounded furious. On the human side, the screaming was desperate, the kind that didn't know whether to cheer or beg. Zeus surged again with another wrong fast chain. Adam dodged two, got clipped by one, then took a clean hit to the ribs. The hit landed deep enough that Adam's knee touched the ground again almost immediately. Zeus stepped in again without pause, throwing a punch toward Adam's head while Adam was low. The human stance screamed, louder than the last time, because now it was a pattern. Adam twisted, avoiding the full hit again, but the punch grazed his temple. His head snapped slightly. Blood flicked in a thin spray. Adam pushed up. Slower. Brunhild's hand rose behind us, and this time it didn't hesitate. 2 fingers extended and stayed up a fraction longer. The Valkyrie beside her leaned forward, ready to run. Adam stood fully at the last possible moment and stepped forward. Brunhild lowered her hand with a sharp motion, eyes narrowed. Her voice cut low to the Valkyrie beside her. If he chains while Adam is on the ground again, we deploy earlier. No waiting for a slow rise. The Valkyrie nodded quickly, face tight. Understood. I heard the lean fighter a few seats away whisper, she's going to pull him out. Another fighter answered, she can't pull him. It's a match. The lean fighter snapped back in a hiss, then she'll send someone else the second he can't stand. I didn't look away from the ring, but I spoke casually, my voice calm and even. If you're going to whisper, whisper quieter. The lean fighter glanced at me, irritated, then shut up. Zeus stopped for a beat. He bounced on his toes, shoulders loose, grin wide, and looked up toward the gods' stands. Did you see that? Zeus shouted happily. He dodged while kneeling. The gods roared. Some laughed. Some shouted for him to finish it. Some sounded like they were enjoying the cruelty more than the fight. Zeus turned back to Adam and smiled like he was talking to a friend. You're still here, Zeus said cheerfully. Adam wiped his mouth again. Yes. Zeus tilted his head. You know I'm going to hit you when you're down again, right? Adam's expression stayed calm. Yes. Zeus laughed hard enough that his shoulders shook. Great. He surged again. The next chain was tighter. A face shot, a chest shot, then a ribs shot that landed clean. Adam dropped to one knee again, palm touching stone. Zeus stepped in and threw another punch toward Adam's head while Adam was still low, faster than before. Adam twisted again, but this one clipped him harder. His head snapped. The sound of impact carried up into the stands. The human stands screamed like they were being hit themselves. Adam's knee stayed down for a fraction longer. Brunhild's hand rose immediately. 2 fingers extended, clear and held. The Valkyrie beside her sprinted to the corridor mouth. I felt the fighter's section tense all at once. Breathing stopped. Hands clenched. Someone's foot scraped stone without meaning to. Adam pushed up. The rise was slow, and for the first time it looked like it took a full decision to stand. Not because Adam hesitated, but because his body had to obey. He stood. He wiped his mouth again. He stepped forward again. Brunhild lowered her hand with a tight, controlled motion. The Valkyrie halted at the corridor mouth and stepped back, breathing shallow. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me let out a rough exhale. That was it. I shook my head slightly, still calm. Not yet. He stared at me. He was down too long. I grinned faintly. He got up. The fighter looked like he wanted to argue with the simplicity of that, but Zeus moved again and the ring stole attention. Zeus laughed, delighted by the near deployment he didn't know about, and attacked again. Adam copied again, landing a punch on Zeus's cheek. Zeus laughed again and hit Adam in the ribs again. Adam dropped to one knee again. Zeus stepped in again to punch while he was down. Adam twisted, avoided the full hit, but got grazed. Adam stood again. The rhythm was becoming brutal and repetitive: hit, kneel, chain, stand, step forward. Brunhild didn't move from her position now. She stayed near the corridor entrance, hands ready at her waist, eyes locked on Adam's knees like her timing depended on it. It did. I felt the fighters' section straining to stay quiet. People wanted to talk. They wanted to shout. Brunhild's presence kept them from doing either. Then, unexpectedly, Zeus slowed. He didn't stop smiling, but he eased the pace for more than a heartbeat. He stepped back 2 steps, lifted his hands, palms open, and laughed. All right, Zeus said happily. Let's breathe again. The gods roared, laughing and shouting. The humans didn't laugh. They screamed anyway, ragged and desperate. Adam didn't chase. He stood still, breathing heavy, blood on his face and chest. He wiped his mouth again, then took a slow breath through his nose. His eyes stayed steady. This lull was longer than the last few. Long enough that even the arena's roar shifted, like the crowd didn't know whether to fill the gap with hope or panic. In the fighters section, low talk resumed almost immediately, like people couldn't hold it in. A fighter behind me whispered, "Adam's breathing looks worse." Another answered, "But he's still calm." A third muttered, "Calm doesn't heal ribs." I chuckled softly, still facing the ring. Nothing heals ribs mid-fight. A couple heads turned toward me. I kept my smile easy. "So stop talking like you've got a better plan." They went quiet, not because they agreed, but because they didn't have an answer. Brunhild used the lull. She turned and stepped into the corridor. Not far. Just enough that her words would be heard clearly by the backup fighter without carrying into the fighters section or the arena. I could still see her profile near the entrance. The Valkyrie who had been watching her hands followed close. Brunhild's voice stayed low and clipped. "Listen carefully." A calm, steady voice answered from the corridor. "Yes." Brunhild continued, "Zeus is now chaining strikes while the opponent is down. That means you cannot rely on time to set your stance after a knockdown. If you go in, you keep your footing stable even on broken ground." "Yes," the backup fighter replied. Brunhild added, "You do not get drawn into mirroring his pace. He wants you to chase speed. You don't chase. You make him come to you." The backup fighter answered, "Controlled." "Understood." The Valkyrie beside Brunhild spoke quietly, "Practical. Voland is ready on command. No delay." Brunhild nodded once. "Good." She continued briefing, still low, still direct. "If I signal 2 fingers, you move to the arena line. If I signal again, you step out. If I drop the signal, you stop. No guessing." The backup fighter replied, "Yes." Brunhild's tone hardened slightly. "And don't talk. No speeches. No trying to inspire anyone. You walk out, you fight." "Yes," the backup fighter said again. I watched the ring while listening with one ear. Zeus was still smiling, still talking casually to Adam as if the lull was part of the fun. "You're bleeding a lot," Zeus said cheerfully. Adam nodded. "Yes." Zeus tilted his head. "Does it hurt?" Adam answered calmly. "Yes." Zeus laughed like he loved the honesty. "And you still keep coming?" Adam's eyes stayed steady. "Yes." Zeus pointed at him. "You're my favorite human today." The gods reacted loudly. Some laughed. Some sounded irritated. The humans roared Adam's name again, louder, desperate pride mixed with fear. Brunhild finished her corridor briefing with one more instruction, tight and simple. "If you step out, you commit. Don't hesitate once you're seen." The backup fighter answered, "Understood." Brunhild stepped back out of the corridor and returned to her position near the entrance, posture rigid again, eyes on the ring, hands low and ready. The lull was still ongoing, but it was thinning. Zeus's feet had started bouncing again. His shoulders loosened. His grin widened in a way that meant he was about to surge. In the fighters section, the lull made some people bolder with talk. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me muttered, "She's ready to replace him mid-match." I shrugged lightly. "She's ready for the moment he can't stand." He scowled. "That's the same thing." I grinned faintly. "Not really." He opened his mouth, then shut it as Zeus moved again. Zeus ended the lull with no warning, exploding forward with wrong fast movement. His fist snapped toward Adam's face. Adam tried to tilt away and got clipped. Blood sprayed. Zeus chained immediately into a tighter rhythm than before. Face, chest, ribs. Adam dodged what he could, copied one punch, landed it on Zeus's cheek. Zeus laughed loudly, delighted, and hit Adam again. A clean ribs hit landed. Adam dropped to one knee. Zeus stepped in and punched toward Adam's head while Adam was down, faster than the earlier chains. Adam twisted, but the punch clipped him clean. Adam stayed down for a fraction longer. Brunhild's hand rose instantly. 2 fingers extended. The Valkyrie beside her sprinted to the corridor mouth. The fighters section tightened again. No one spoke. No one breathed loudly. Adam pushed up. His rise was slow. Zeus stepped in again, trying to chain another punch while Adam was still rising. Adam leaned away and avoided the clean hit by a narrow margin, then stood fully. Brunhild kept her 2 fingers up for a heartbeat longer, then dropped them when Adam's feet were stable. The Valkyrie halted at the corridor mouth and stepped back again, face tight. Zeus laughed, delighted by how close he'd pushed Adam without even knowing it. "Nice." Adam wiped his mouth again, blood smearing, and stepped forward again anyway. Zeus surged again. The next chain was even tighter. More body shots. More ribs hits. Less time between them. Adam copied and landed hits, but he was taking more clean damage now. The trade was getting uglier. Adam dropped to one knee again. Zeus punched toward his head again while he was down. Adam twisted, got clipped again. Adam pushed up again. Slower. Brunhild's hand rose again. 2 fingers. The Valkyrie moved again. Corridor mouth. Ready. Adam stood again. Brunhild dropped the signal again. This was happening too often now. The lean fighter a few seats away whispered, voice shaking with frustration, "He's going to stay down eventually." Someone else snapped quietly, "Shut up." I spoke without looking away, tone calm. "If you're going to say it once. Don't repeat it like it helps." They went quiet. Zeus stopped for a heartbeat, laughed, then stepped in again. He threw a body shot that landed hard. Adam dropped to both knees briefly, palms touching stone. The human stands screamed as if the world had tilted. Zeus stepped in to punch while Adam was down again, more aggressively now, trying to stack damage before Adam could rise. Adam twisted, avoided one, got clipped by the next. Adam stayed down for a fraction longer. Brunhild's 2 fingers shot up. The Valkyrie beside her ran to the corridor mouth again, faster than before. I felt my own chest tighten slightly, still controlled, but sharper now. Adam's knees were on the stone. Zeus was above him. Brunhild's rule had changed. The threshold had narrowed. Adam pushed up. Slow. Zeus tried to hit him again as he rose. Adam leaned away enough to avoid the clean hit, then stood fully. Brunhild lowered her hand again, but her expression didn't soften. She looked more strict, more ready, like she'd already accepted that the next time might be the last time. Zeus laughed loudly. "You're still standing. Great." Adam wiped his mouth, breathing heavy, and answered calmly. "Yes." The fighters' section was quiet again, not because it wanted to be, but because there was nothing to say that would change what was happening. Brunhild spoke quietly to the Valkyrie beside her, eyes never leaving the ring. "Next time he takes both knees and Zeus steps in, we deploy if the rise is not immediate." The Valkyrie nodded once. "Yes." Zeus tightened the chain again, landing another rib shot. Adam dropped to one knee again, then rose again. Slower. Brunhild's 2 fingers rose again, then lowered again. The corridor backup stayed unseen, but the timing was getting closer, the signals coming more often, the steps to the corridor mouth becoming a repeated motion like a drill. I stayed seated, posture steady, face relaxed, because if the fighters' section started breaking down, it would only add noise to a situation that already had too much of it. The broad-shouldered fighter beside me finally whispered, voice low and rough, "How do you keep smiling?" I glanced at him with an easy grin. "Because if I stop, you'll all start looking like you're about to fall apart." He stared at me, then looked away, jaw tight. Zeus surged again. Adam took the hit, dropped to one knee again, rose again. Brunhild's 2 fingers rose again, stayed up a fraction longer than before, then dropped again when Adam's feet stabilized. The arena noise kept pounding, humans screaming, gods roaring, Zeus laughing, Adam answering with simple words, and the corridor behind us held the backup fighter in silence, ready to step out the moment Brunhild's rule decided Adam had taken one breath too long.